We have some careless people who are fashionable in their crowd. The careless, fashionable crowd, some came from Bethany and some came from Jerusalem, and they were reactionary one to the other. Then we have the clueless disciples who were with Jesus but hindered by familiarity. And if sin did not block their vision, their opinions surely did. And then we have the group that is with him, that believing coward leaders who were not followers or doers, but they did believe. Then we have the Father of the Trinity, the confirming, affirming Father. And then there's the callous, rejected world, people who rejected truth, people in darkness, people who believed, some rejected, and some were seeking. As we examine this list, it is clear to see that many or most of them did not know who Jesus really was. They were blinded, they were clouded, distorted, veiled in their abilities to see, to behold, to discover the person of Jesus as he stood and lived right before them. But why? How can we testify today, or can we testify that we really know who Jesus is, or are we blinded too? Come with me down the street of reality for a moment. Pre-pandemic, let's take a look at that word again. Behold, to see, to grasp, to examine, to plunder, to watch for. How did we look at him? Did we really show confidently that we understood who he was? Pre-pandemic, the church would be empty, kind of like it is now. Because some people had the mentality, I'm not going to church where those hypocrites are. Preachers not living right, deacon not living right, choir member not living right. I can have church at home and I can go to hell without going through the church. But I think I need to just serve notice. I don't know who you are, if you're present here or if you're only in the cyber congregation. I need to tell you, beware of that mindset that you are not going to hang out with hypocrites. Because I think I ought to tell you the church is unlike any other organization as an organism. Most organizations are looking for some good people to join their organization. But the church is the one organism that's not looking for good people to join its organization. The church is comprised of bad people who've been saved by a good God. Let me just rewind that and tell you again. If you're looking to find good people and you come to church looking for good people, I think I need to tell you, everybody in church are bad people that's been saved by a good God. It does not mean that we are sinless, but we have the power to sin less. Then preachers, perhaps we before the pandemic may have considered people getting on our nerves and not been diligent with shepherding the sheep as God has commissioned and called us to do. But I think I ought to tell you that even if you got to step out of the box, if you got to try a different method, but don't change your message or mission, how to reach the masses, men of every birth, for an answer, Jesus gave the key. If I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me. We need to change the modus operandi. The church cannot be personality-centered, but Christ-centered. It cannot be centered around the pastor. It cannot be centered around the deacon. It cannot be centered around pew members, but centered around Christ. He must and he will always be the standard by which we are to govern ourselves. Whomever you may be, pre-pandemic, one thing for certain, in this pandemic, God is trying to get our attention. We're seeing things we've never beheld before. There comes that word again, look. When have you ever seen so many people die due to a virus? When have you ever seen such weather for 7 or 8 days like what we've experienced this week? Surely God is knocking. God is speaking during the pandemic, during the weather, to get our attention, to tell us business as usual is no longer accepted. And so here we see all that is present, but there is a Lazarus conspiracy. May I introduce him to you? The Bible speaks of two men who bear the name of Lazarus. The name Lazarus means God has help or without help. And two men who are in the Bible are the epitome of God has help and without help. Lazarus, number one, is the beggar in the story of the rich man. You remember him, don't you? In the parable, it is the only instance where Jesus gives a name to a parabolical character. But in early times, there was an idea that it was not a parable. In early times, it was believed that it was a real story in Luke 16, 19 through 31. But here in our text is the second Lazarus, the brother of Mary and Martha, the Lazarus of Bethany. Yes, sir. Alexander White, that 18th century divine, said that Lazarus of Bethany came as close to Jesus of Nazareth in his character and in his services and his unparalleled experience. Lazarus came as close to emulating Jesus as any mere mortal man ever could. Lazarus is silent. He is never to be mentioned in the New Testament until the appointed time to where he is to be sick and die and be raised for the glory of God. Lazarus seeks obscurity. He loves silence. He rivals in neglect. He loves to be overlooked. And even the very evangelists overlook him as he's a worm and no man. But Lazarus is the subject of the greatest story and the most astonishing miracle in the gospel story. He is the beloved friend of Jesus, whom Jesus loved so much, he wept at his grave. Lazarus' resurrection caused an excitement of the Jews to the point that they wanted to put Jesus to death. But they conspired to kill Lazarus also. And so it is, he was honored as the guest at Simon's banquet. And after being the honored guest at Simon's banquet, he vanishes from the gospel story to be heard of no more. If there was any man of because of his own fear, but because of the imminent danger his presence posed for his master. But I tell you, there is a Lazarus conspiracy this morning. Well, let me unpack the text for you. Let's look at the place. Then we'll look at the problem. We'll look at the place and the plot. The place is Bethany. Bethany is only 2 miles from the citadel of the enemies of Jesus. Jesus knows that the Jews are out to arrest him and kill him. But yet he travels only 2 miles to Bethany to enjoy the comfort and company of his friend. Now Bethany comes from the word Bethel, which means house of God. And that makes sense because Jesus, Dr. Bryce, was a nomad. He was nomadic because he had no permanent dwelling. Matter of fact, Sister Tina Bell, he said, birds of the air have nests and foxes of the ground have holes, but I, the Son of Man, have nowhere but to lay my head. So Jesus loved to go to Bethany because he had 3 friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, who had a house in Bethany. And so Bethany was his home because he had friends that gave him a home. Well, I told you the problem is that at this dinner there are some plates, one for Lazarus, one for Mary, one for Martha, one for Jesus. And the problem is the citadel of his enemy is only 2 miles away. So the plot is on. The popularity of Jesus had spread abroad to the point that everybody basically knew of him, but very few understood him. You know, that's kind of like it is with us sometimes. Folk know our name, think they know our game, but they really don't know who we are. They like to talk about you, and I'm discovering that it's not too bad to be talked about. If folk are not talking about you, that means you're subject to not doing anything. But don't mind them talking, because sometimes when folk lose the ability and lose the privilege of talking to you, all they can do is talk about you. And so it is. They are talking about Jesus. They are planning to kill Jesus. And then as the conversation heated up, the conspiracy emanated. Somebody said, well, if we kill Jesus, we're going to have to kill Lazarus also. Because though the word of God does not record one word that Lazarus ever spoke, they concluded that every time he walks down the street, even the little children will declare, there goes Lazarus, whom Jesus raised from the dead. So they made it up in their mind, we've got to get rid of this Jesus. But we must kill Lazarus also. And as I get ready to close here this morning, if their only purpose was to kill Lazarus, that they might stifle the witness of Lazarus, then I wonder what had they planned to do about that wedding couple in Canaan of Galilee, who would tell somebody he must be the Messiah because he turned our water into wine. I wondered if their purpose was to stifle the witness of We know that thou art a teacher that comes from God, but no man can do what you do. I wondered what had they planned to do about that woman that met Jesus at the well. And when Jesus left her, she went running uptown saying, come see a man, told me all I've ever done. This must be the Messiah. My Lord, if there only was the disciple, the witness of Lazarus, what had they planned to do about that man at the pool of Bethesda who was lame for 38 years? And Jesus rolled up on the set and told him, get up off of your bed and put your bed on you. My Lord, what had they planned to do about that man that was blind from birth? And Jesus watched through across his eyes, and they asked him, how is it that you are blind, but now you see? He said, all I know is when I was blind, that I can see. If there only ever was disciple and witness of Lazarus, then they had a bad plan with a Lazarus conspiracy. But I don't know how you feel about it, but I'll be a witness in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of this inclement weather. I'll tell you, he's all this world to me. Without him, nothing would be. I'll tell you, I thank God for Calvary. For at Calvary, when we were at our worst, he was at his best. Is there anybody here who will be a witness for my Lord? Is there anybody here who will be a witness for my Jesus? Do you know he's all right? You tried it. If you know he's all right, say yeah. Yeah. He walked with me. He talked with me. He told me that I am alone. The joy I have, the world didn't give it to me. The world can't take it away. He's all right. Yeah. 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 While the blood is running warm in my veins, I want to be a witness for him. There is none like him. The door of the church stands ajar. It just might be one here. Who will worship him